Welcome, everyone. Good boy, Tucker. This is learning at its most fun.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today on another Thursday webinar. Today is actually the beginning of a 4-part series that we're doing specifically on workflows. So today's topic is, for our workflow series, conceptualizing and whiteboarding. Now, I will say today's presentation, we're not actually going to be going into the CRM at all. We're really just going to be outside of the CRM. We're going to think up a few different processes, how we can build those out. I'm going to be talking about some of the terminology that we use and what it means, so you actually can start whiteboarding your own workflow processes if you want. So again, today we're really just going to be focusing on what kind of processes we need to build and what we need to know about that. Now, keep in mind, we will next week be taking what we're building today, and then we will take that into the CRM and build out the templates, so those templates can be reused over and over again. In the third week, we're then going to be running through those workflows. So after we build them, set them up, build them as templates, we'll run through them in the actual system in week 3. And then in week 4, we're going to be talking about how we can actually enhance them with our automations features. So there's a lot that we're going to be covering. We're going to go a lot more in depth than we normally do when we talk about workflows. And we will be building out 3 different workflows that give you different ideas of how you can actually set all of these up. Okay, so with that, let's actually talk a little bit about, what workflows are. So workflows are repeatable processes. I always need a process for maybe when I'm onboarding clients, when I'm doing maybe different client meetings. It's a repeatable process of tasks. So again, like workflows are going to be a set order of tasks and events to make sure that I do the same process the same way every single time. And so as some examples, one of the processes that I want to build today is essentially prospecting calls with the goal of scheduling an initial meeting with a prospect. So we can essentially move somebody from a prospect to a client. That's really valuable. So maybe that you do have your own prospecting process, like a call cadence, that I reach out every few days with the goal of scheduling that prospect for a client meeting. Another process that we're going to be working on is just a basic checklist of items that for needed information anytime we have a new client. So as soon as somebody goes from a prospect to a new client, maybe I have a workflow that gives me a list of items I need to make sure and fill out their contact record for. And then the third process that we're going to be building is similar to for preparing, executing, and following up on specifically a client review is the example we're going to be using, but this can also be for any client meeting. Anytime I have a meeting, I need to make sure that I prep, execute, and follow up, and there's certain tasks that I need to make sure get done the same way every single time. So again, there's so many different ways that a process could be laid out that I wanted to give these 3 examples. So there's going to be a few simple ones. They're going to get a little more complicated. We're going to show you everything there is to know about how you can actually whiteboard out these processes. So there is a term that I've been using over and over so far, is the term whiteboarding. And so we will get into that. But before we do, I want to talk about some of our terminologies. And those are our steps and our tasks. So with workflows, you have a set order of events. Those are the steps. Steps are telling us what part of the process we're at. So in a perfect world scenario, we always want to go step 1, step 2, step 3, and then we're done. What's great about the step is, again, like it tells you what part of the process you're at. Am I in the preparation step? Am I on the execution? Am I on the follow-up? This is a great idea to have, so that way if you're overseeing all of the workflows in your CRM database, you can take a look and easily see, where am I at with every single process that I have currently going. Below steps, you have tasks. So each step can have multiple tasks that can be assigned to different people. So you can assign them. So maybe one task in the step is set to be assigned to one user, and another task should be assigned to user B. So user A and user B can both work on the same step, but have different tasks assigned to them. What's great about the tasks is they can show up on various locations as well. So there is an actual page in the CRM where you can see all of the tasks that are assigned to you, or you can also go in and see all of the tasks that are assigned to other people. But it really does give you that ability to make sure that you are getting the task done for your part of the process so everything can move forward. How I always like to describe steps and tasks. This is the easiest way I found to describe it is in a real world scenario outside of the financial world is I'm going to talk about, we need to run some errands. I need to go to the grocery store. I need to go to the hardware store, and I need to go to the pet store. So these are the errands I'm going to be running today. So think of it, if I'm at the store, if I'm at the grocery store, technically I cannot pick up anything from the pet store or the hardware store. And so that's a big thing to keep in mind is our processes are one step at a time. So again, like if I'm at the grocery store, step one, I cannot be getting things from the hardware store or the pet store, steps 2 and 3, until I have gotten everything from the grocery store. Okay, so again, our processes are one step at a time, but you can have multiple tasks. So if I am on step 1, I'm at the grocery store, I need to get milk, eggs, bread, bacon. I got a list of items. And keep in mind, it does not matter when I'm at the grocery store if I pick up the milk before the eggs or the eggs before the milk. That the same concept goes into our processes. If you have multiple tasks under one step, the order of the tasks does not matter. I can do task 2, then task 1, then task 4, then task 3. Even though they show in a linear order when you're working on them, you do not need to complete them. And so that also goes in line, whereas if you have multiple people assigned to multiple tasks, and same thing, if you're at the grocery store with more than one person, I don't need to wait for the person at the grocery store to pick up their item. They don't need to pick up the milk before I pick up the eggs. Again, the task order does not matter. So let's get into this a little bit further. Is I want to talk about the whiteboarding. So when you whiteboard and think out of your processes, and again, we're going to be whiteboarding these processes together today, is you want to sit down with your office, either with a blank piece of paper or even like a whiteboard, which is where we got the term from. There's actually different ways you can do it. Like maybe if you want to use Post-it notes, or maybe you have like a chalkboard even. So I'm going to be showing you an actual program that we found online, which is great. It's just draw.io. And I'll show you it. We're going to be using it. It's just easier to sort of move things around, and I'll show you how that works. But when you are whiteboarding, it's really important that you start with the in a perfect world scenario. So in a perfect world, I want to go steps 1, step 2, step 3. After you set up your perfect world scenario, you can then go back into it and then decide, well, is there different possible directions we can go? So maybe in our process, maybe step 2 might be irrelevant, and I need an option to go from step 1 to step 3 and skipping step 2 completely. You can build out those situations in the workflow process as well. And so a few questions that I like to point out when whiteboarding out your processes, and these help actually build them out, is you want to ask, what are the steps we need to take? Well, maybe if it's for a meeting, the steps are prep, execute, and follow up. Maybe if it's just our checklist of items that we need to get, it's just one step. Maybe if it's our prospecting cadence, I have four steps that I need to do. I need 4 different interactions reaching out to a prospect to see if they want to schedule a meeting with me. And so once you think of those steps, then you need to think, well, what are the tasks that need to get completed so I can move forward out of that step into the next step? Okay, so after you know what your steps are, think of what are the tasks that need to happen in order to complete that step and move forward. After that, you're going to then think of your outcomes. What could the outcome for each step be? So as I'm finishing step 1, what is going to take me to step 2? What option could possibly take me and skip step 2 and go to step 3? Maybe I need an outcome that just ends the workflow after a certain part of the process. And then after you ask that question, you decide, well, where do we need to go if I select a specific outcome? And so we are going to be building out using these questions in this order. And again, like I said, I'm going to be using a program. You can just go to draw.io .io. You don't necessarily need to be doing this on your computer today. You can just sort of follow along with what I'm doing. Again, that's the program I'm using. It's just easier sort of for whiteboarding out. It makes it a little easier. And in all honesty, it's because my handwriting is horrible. So it's just much easier to write things on a computer. So what we're going to be doing is, again, the first question is, what are the steps we need to take? Well, first off, we need to talk about what is the actual process we're going to build first. So the first process is I want to think of just a basic checklist of items that I need to make sure are filled out with a contact record anytime that I change them from a prospect to a client. So it's essentially, I'm going to call it like an important information. Like, hey, I need to make sure that I have, their contact photo in the CRM. I need to make sure I have their email addresses, their phone numbers. I need to make sure and set up the family section. Like, even though, in Redtail, there's not a way where you can say, I have required fields. You might want to consider using a workflow to say, hey, I need to create tasks that make sure that I am told to fill out these specific fields for a contact record. Okay, so with that, what I'm going to do is we're going to start with the steps. Well, this is just going to be a one step. I don't need to go through a process, but it might just be a one-step workflow. And so let's see, I'm just going to hit the square. We're going to use our square as our steps. We'll use that. What's great about this is, again, I'm just going to click on the icon and then I can say, I can just call it step number 1 if I want. Easy enough. Now, again, you have the ability to customize and you can change these however you want. I'm just going to keep it simple right now, step 1. Or what I can do is just say, call it contact data. What is this actually doing? Is I'm filling out all the contact data I need. Once I decide what my step is, and I said that's the only step I need so far, and actually let's make this a little bit bigger. I'm gonna make this a little bigger so we can have that. I now need to decide what are the tasks. And so I'm gonna actually add these as like, we'll do the rectangle. So I'm gonna add a few. And so we're gonna just line them up here, and you'll see why I love this program is you can just start filling them out. So I'm just gonna add a few different rectangles here. We'll add a few more, and I can fill them out pretty easily. All right, so one of the first tasks I want to do is I want to make sure that they have a contact photo. So I can say add contact photo. The next one, I want to say, gather email addresses. And so each step, each task here is just another item that I need to make sure and do. Phone numbers, I could say, gather addresses, not just email addresses, but addresses. I also want to set the servicing advisor field. Okay, so any specific task that you need to do, if I need to spell the word advisor correctly, there we go, I can do that. And easy enough, I can just keep adding different tasks. I absolutely love this. So let's do another one. Let's do set up family section. Okay, so these are going to be a little Redtail related. So again, what this is showing is I have one step and it's going to have multiple tasks. And easy enough, like that can just be a workflow. And essentially this workflow is just a checklist of items that I need to do. Now, just to briefly show, just sort of like, I will show you how all these workflows are at the end. We have some PDFs if you want to see them, listed out. I definitely will show you that information. But this is the part that really we're focusing on today, is to say, hey, we need to conceptualize this before we go into Redtail and start building as a template. We need to make sure that we actually build them out. All right, so I'm going to actually add another page because we're going to whiteboard out another workflow process. This one's going to be a little more complicated because this one, what I want to do is I actually want to build out a call cadence for any time I add a prospect to the database. Okay, so again, this one's going to be a little more complicated. So the first one was just a one-step workflow with as many tasks as I need to happen. The goal of this next one for prospecting is that I want to have, let's say, 4 interactions. Anytime I had a prospect to the database, I want to reach out and call them or send them an email every few days to make sure to see if I can get an answer hey, do you want to schedule a meeting? Or maybe if you don't want to schedule a meeting, maybe you want me to leave you alone. But a call cadence is great because I can actually have all these tasks populate and make sure that I am not falling behind. I'm reaching out to the prospects with the goal. Again, my goal is to get them to tell me, do they want to schedule a meeting or do they want me to leave them alone? So with this, let's start out with 4 steps. So I'm going to hit we're going to use the square button again, and we'll do step 1, step 2, step 3, and we'll do step 4. All right, so we're going to just do the 4 for now. And I'm going to come up here and let's call this, interaction. Oh, wait, that's 2 R's, I believe. Interaction. Oh, no, not 2 R's. I just spelled it completely wrong. I apologize. So we're going to do interaction number 1. We're going to do interaction number 2. Interaction number 3. And interaction number 4. Now, again, maybe you want to have less interactions each time for your prospecting. Maybe you want to have more. This is up to you. You can decide what that's going to be. And let me actually zoom in just a little bit so we'll see this a little easier on your end. So now that I have my steps, I also know that after I reach out, I also want to make sure and have a step that if they tell me no, that I want to update their contact information to mark them as maybe a lost prospect. So I'm going to add another square, and we're going to say we're going to have a step for not interested. And then in the positive light, I'm going to have another step that is going to be for interested. So they are interested in meeting. Okay, because depending on what they give me, what their answer is, I need to do tasks and update their contact in the negative. And I also need to do tasks and update them in regards to the positive answer. So let's go back up to the top. Now that we have an idea of our steps, I'm going to add the rectangle. And let's say that for step 1, I want to make a call. So make call number 1. Okay. I also want to make an email. So we can also say, send email number 1. Now I'm putting number 1 on here because maybe I do different emails, different calls, and this just gives me a marker on it. So I'm just labeling it that way. You don't necessarily have to put numbers. It just makes it easier for me to understand that I have multiple interactions, multiple calls on different days. Now, in this case, I'm going to go down to interaction number 2. We're going to add some tasks there. There's also going to be, we'll just add 1 task. And we can move these around. On interaction number 2, maybe I don't want to send an email. I just want to make a call. So I can say make call number 2. And then interaction number 3, we're also going to make a call. So this is going to be make call number 3. And then interaction number 4, we'll add another rectangle here. And I can say make final call. All right, now I also want to send another email. Maybe I don't want to send on the second interaction, just a reminder email. So if I get to the third interaction, I want to send a second email. So I'm going to put that over here and I can say, send email number 2. Okay, so as you see, so far, we've added some things for interaction number 1. We're going to do 2 different tasks. Interaction number 2, we're just going to do 1 task. Interaction number 3, we have 2 different tasks again. And then interaction number 4, we need to make just that last final call. And actually, we can add 1 more. We're going to say maybe send final email, so we can say send final email. Easy enough. Now, I also need tasks if they tell me they're not interested on that step. So I'm going to add another task. And I can say this is going to be update contact category. Because in this case, if they say, hey, I don't want to be contacted anymore, I don't want to be a client, they give me the answer, I'm not necessarily going to delete them out of the database. I want that history of me reaching out to them. So I'm just going to add them as a lost prospect. So that's what I'm using as the category field. And I can make a task for that because I still need to update the system. And again, that's what workflows are about, is telling you what actions you need to do to make sure that everything stays up to date. Now, if they are interested in a meeting, I can actually let's add 2 tasks here. We're going to add task number 1 and task number 2. And the first one is also update contact category. But this one will be in the positive light. They will be, maybe a pending prospect, or maybe they're going to be moved to an actual client. And so again, I can say I still need to update their category if they've scheduled a meeting, but I also need to schedule, we'll call it the discovery meeting. Okay, so I put that in there. Now, the workflow again, if the goal of this process is to schedule a meeting, I still have a task that tells me I need to schedule that meeting. So now coming back to up top of our process, on step one, our interaction, we're going to make a phone call, send an email. Once that's done, if they don't give me an answer, I'm going to make another phone call a few days later. That says Cal. I need to update that to call. There we go. As I scroll down, if they still don't give me an answer a few days after that, I'm going to make sure and give them a phone call, send a second email, and then I'm going to do one last interaction and make the final phone call and send the final email. If at any point in time that they tell me they are interested or not interested, I can then move on to either step 5 or 6, which is going to then, again, tell me different tasks that I need to do to move forward. All right, so we're going to be coming back, so we're not fully done with this either. But again, this is just an easy way that I can look and see all of my steps and tasks and start organizing them in the system. All right, so the third workflow that we're going to be actually whiteboarding out today is like a client review process. So this is more about supporting the preparation, execution, and follow-up of an actual client meeting. So if we schedule a client review meeting on the calendar, I want to make sure that I prep, execute, and follow up on that meeting the same way every single time. And so with that, I've decided that there's only 3 steps for this process. So we're going to add 1, 2, 3. We're going to add our 3 squares. We're going to do similar item here. So I'll move them around. 1, 2, and 3. And step 1, let's call it, prepare for a client review meeting. You can put that in. Step 2 is maybe I can say just review day items, things I need to do the day of the meeting itself. And then I have maybe a step that's going to be for review follow-up. Okay, so these are going to be the list of tasks that need to happen after the meeting has happened. Okay, so again, step 1 are going to be tasks that need to be to prepare for the meeting. Step 2 is things that happen on the day of the meeting. And step 3 is going to be the review follow-up, tasks that need to happen after. So in this case, when I'm preparing, I have a few different tasks that I'm going to add here. So I'm going to just hit this button a few times. First one, we need to run the plan report from our software. So plan report from planning software, if I can spell. All right, so we got that task. I can move that where I need it to go. And another one we want to do is run and print the notes report. Okay, so again, this is the part of the whiteboarding process where you can say, hey, I need everyone to write down a task of everything you do when you prep for a client review meeting. And so if you have everybody write it down, you're not going to miss out on these tasks. Another thing I say is run and print email report. I can do that option as well. I am failing immensely on my spelling today, and that is okay because I am a horrible typer, but that's okay. That's what's great about computers is I can do that right click and spell check every day. So another thing I need to do is, let's see, review and print yearly goals is a thing I need to do beforehand. So again, I'm just thinking of, hey, what are the different things I do to make sure I'm prepped for an actual client review meeting? And then another one, actually, this is big in regards to prepare, is confirm the meeting with the client. So we got that in there. I think, can I have another one? And let's do one more. I want to do, we'll do the UDF report. So run and print UDF report. Perfect. Okay. So now that I have those different tasks, oh, this one got to be a different shape. That's okay. That's going to bug me. It might bug a few of you as well. So I need it to be the same shape. All right. So run and print UDF report. Perfect. All right. So we got step 1 and we have here's 6 tasks that need to happen. All right. So let's actually move this down a little bit. Again, that's why I love this program is you can really move it around. And again, if you're curious, I just went to draw.io and it's a free program you can use to really sort of like map out some processes. This makes it a lot easier to use. All right, so on review day items, What are the things I need to do? There's really just two tasks. I need to prep the conference room and then prep and gather all paperwork. So I'm just going to add two tasks. I'm going to say prep conference room. And we'll move this one right here. And then the other one is going to be, we got prep and gather paperwork. Perfect. All right. And then on my review follow-up step, I have, I got three tasks here. First one is going to be enter meeting notes. This is a really important one. So even though the workflow process, like I have a meeting, what's great, and especially you might want to have this for the advisors who are doing the meetings, is a task that actually says, hey, you've done the meeting, now enter the notes. What's great to have it as part of the workflow is you can go and see the process, say, have the notes been entered, yes or no? If it's listed as a task in there, I'll know right away, we haven't added those meeting notes yet for that workflow or for that actual client meeting that we had. And so having that as a task is going to be really beneficial. Another one, let's say, make and record adjustments. And then the third task, we're going to do just a follow-up call. Okay, so those are the different tasks we're going to do after the meeting has taken place. And let's keep this in line over here. So we'll push it that way. All right, so now this is what our client review process is starting to look like. We got step one with all these different tasks that need to happen, step two with multiple tasks, and step three with multiple tasks as well. And again, what's great about this process is I can assign each of these tasks to different people, even to teams of users. Those are going to be things we'll get into in next week as well, when we take this information and build it into a template as well. Okay, so keep in mind, this is still just the beginning of working out and building out these processes. All right, so now that we've built out our steps, so we got three processes. We got just a basic contact ad. We got page number 2 is our prospecting process, where we have those multiple phone calls, things like that. And our third one is the client review process. Now, let's actually go back into our slides. I want to talk more about the outcomes. Okay, so the outcomes themselves give you the ability to control the direction that your process is going. So earlier I talked about, in a perfect world, we want to go steps 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we're done. But sometimes situations arise where I need to go in a different direction. Maybe I need to go back and repeat a step. Maybe I need to move forward and skip a step. Maybe I just need to end the workflow at step 1. If I reach out and I'm preparing for a client review meeting and a client cancels, I need the option to end the workflow process because they've canceled. We need to cancel our process. It's really beneficial to have the information in there that things have been canceled, because I just don't want to delete the workflow because then I lose the history from it. I want to actually mark the information that they gave me and what direction this process went. Okay, so with that, let's go back into our system and we're going to ask these last two questions. What are the outcomes for each step? And where do we need to go when a specific outcome is selected? So let's go back here. For our first workflow, I'm going to say this one actually doesn't necessarily need outcomes because there's only one step. Okay, now you still can put outcomes if you want. Maybe I need to restart it, things like that. But for the first workflow here, we're not actually going to be building out outcomes because this is just a checklist of items. Either I do the items or I don't. There's really no options from there. So let's actually go to the second one and let's talk about this cadence, this prospecting cadence call. Okay, so again, here I have 4 interactions set up. Interaction number 1, I'm going to make a phone call and send an email. If I make the phone call and right away they say, hey, I'm definitely interested, I definitely want to schedule a meeting, sign me up, that's great. But if they gave me that positive answer, and then a few days later, I went to interaction number 2 and made a phone call and asked them that same information again, they're going to be confused. In fact, I'm going to be confused saying, why am I calling you again? You already told me that you wanted to schedule a meeting and we scheduled that. So in that case, I want an option that if they say they are interested, I want an option that takes me from this step all the way down to the final step to where I can then make sure and update their contact category and schedule the discovery meeting. If they say, hey, I'm not interested, I want the same thing, because if they say they're not interested, I don't want to call them back a few days later and ask them the same question. That's going to irritate them most likely. So I need an outcome that'll push me from step 1 to take me to step 5 and update their contact to an a lost prospect. Okay, same thing. If they but if I don't get an answer, if I leave a voicemail, if I send an email, they don't respond back, I just need to go to step number 2, and that's the direction that we're going to go automatically if there are no outcomes. So what I'm going to use is, we actually have some little arrows over here that makes it a little easier to use, and we're going to add an arrow. So on the completion, we're going to say there's 3 possible outcomes from step 1. The first one is that I didn't get an answer. So I can just put right here that the first option is they're going to go from step 1 to step 2. All right. So this is our interaction, is we can go from step 1 to step 2. The next outcome is going to be that they are not interested in a meeting. And so for that, we're going to move this all the way down here. And actually, let me zoom out a little bit to make this a little easier. I want to come all the way down here. We will update it this way. And this means that they're going to step number 5. Right there. Perfect. All right. Interaction takes me right there. So far, when I'm completing step 1, I can either go straight to step number 2, or I can go down to step number 5. Now I need another one for in the positive light. Okay, so I can come up, I'm going to put another option right here they can choose. And this one is going to be the most positive. This is really where we want them to go, is that they go down to step number 6, just like that. So you can see this is where it starts to get a little complicated. And this is why we suggest going one step at a time. So now I see on interaction number 1, I have 3 paths I can take. Either the first path, which is going to take me down to interaction number 2, or in the negative light, I can come down here and we're going to go to not interested, or they're going to take me all the way down here and we're going to go to the interested in meeting step. Now I want to do that same thing with these other steps, because now that I'm on interaction number 2, if they didn't give me an answer from these first 2 tasks, I need to give similar options here. So now we're going to say the possibilities are, we can go from interaction number 2 and we'll do the same thing, can go to interaction number 3. Okay, they still didn't give me an answer. A few days later, I need to do the same thing. I'm going to then add another arrow. We're going to do the same, come down to 5. And again, this is really why I like this this program, because it just makes it easier to see what's going on. Okay, so I can move these around however I need to. And then one more one more outcome here will be in the positive light, is if they say they are interested in a meeting. We're going to come right down here to this one. We'll move this. We can keep them organized. Perfect. All right. This is going to bug me, so I'm just going to move it just a little bit around. And again, this is why just having a program like this makes it easier. Again, I always like to say you can also just use Post-it notes, because you can move those around, you can draw them out. But you really want to think this out and say, okay, what are the possible directions we can go? Because again, even though in a perfect world, we always want to go step 1, step 2, step 3, and then we're done, there's so many different options. And if we don't map it out and what it's going to look like, it's going to be confusing later on when we actually build it in as a template in the system. Okay, so again, this is just, you would just keep going through this. You can add similar outcomes. I'm not going to fully do it on here. I'm going to show you, we have these printable that I will show you at the end of this process of what these look like. But this is a really good use for actually building these out. All right, now the next one, again, is just this meeting workflow. So again, for a client review, I always want to go prep, execute, follow up, those 3 steps. But similar before, maybe if I confirm the meeting with the client and they cancel, maybe I need to end the workflow at some part. And so that might be a result of an outcome. I don't need to go to another step. I just need to end the workflow. So what I'm going to do is I'm just actually just we'll add this as just the option for if they end workflow. Okay, so at any time if they choose an outcome, it's just going to go right here and end the workflow process. Okay, so our goal is to go through prep, execution, and follow up And at some point, we're just going to end the workflow over here. Same thing, we're going to be using our arrows. So I'm going to start with on step 1, after I confirm the meeting, let's say that they confirm the meeting. Easy enough. So I'm going to do this. We're going to add right here. So if they do confirm the meeting, we're going to go forward to step 2. If they need to reschedule, now I like this option, you can even have an outcome that restarts your step. So I'm going to use this outcome, and we're just going to flip back to where it was. Easy enough. All right. So if they need to reschedule, I can choose an outcome that says, hey, start this over again. Okay. So even though I've done all these tasks, maybe I need to do them again. So an outcome can actually restart a step you're on. And the third option or third outcome for this step that I can put in here is that they just need to end the workflow. Okay. So if they end the workflow, hey, they say, hey, I need to cancel. I don't want to start reviewing and prepping the conference room if they've canceled. It just is going to go over here and end the workflow. All right, now we come down to the second step, and same situation is maybe the day of the day of the meeting, they call and they cancel. All right, so I can say, hey, okay, I need an outcome that's going to end the workflow because they canceled again. And also, I need an option as if they reschedule, I need to go back up to step 1. Okay, so we can put this right here. I'm going to move this over. So again, it looks like they're moving. All right, so if I'm on step 2, I need to go back to step 1. Okay, so you can see how the processes can start looping. Hey, on step 1, they confirm, day of the meeting, they reschedule, go back to step 1. They confirm, go to step 2, they reschedule, go back to step 1. You can essentially create an endless loop if they keep rescheduling over and over again. But what's great about that is in the process, it's marking all that information in your system. Now, on the day of the meeting, again, after that's finished, I need an outcome that's going to take me to the follow-up. Okay, so I can say, hey, meeting complete. I need to move forward to the follow-up step right from there. Now, again, there's 3 possible outcomes. Either they reschedule, goes back to step 1, they cancel, goes over and ends the workflow, or the meeting's been completed and we move forward to step number 3. Now, even on the final step, you can have the similar information. Maybe, hey, we saw in the process that everything went great, except maybe they forgot to fill out some paperwork. Okay, so maybe I need to bring them back in. So we're going to go all the way back to step number 1. And when you can do that, you can be at the end of your process and say, take me back to the beginning, go back up here. And again, in the very end, once all your follow-up items are done, I still need an outcome that can tell me to end the workflow. All right. So again, I can see that a lot of arrows happening here, but it's really just thinking out all the different possibilities, and it's really going to help you decide what your workflows can look like. Okay. So before we move on from here, I'm going to actually go back to our slides. I want to talk about setting up our target dates and our due dates. So even though in a perfect world, we're going to go step 1, step 2, step 3, we still need to decide where the target date is going to be lying in our actual process. The target date is going to help you have the automatic due dates. So in this case, if you have a client review meeting, and you can actually set maybe step number 2 is the target date, but step number 1 happens a week before. Step number 2 happens on the target date. Step number 3 happens 2 days after. You can set up your workflows so each step can be due a certain amount of days, weeks, or months before or after your actual target date. Now, there's so many different workflows and different ways that the target date can look. So maybe your target date is at the end of the process. Maybe it's a seminar, event, or a project with a deadline. So step 1 happens a month before. Step 2 happens 2 weeks before. Step 3 happens the day of. Or if it's maybe something like our prospecting workflow, new account opening, your target date might be step number 1, the day of you open it up. Step number 2 will happen 2 days after. Step number 3 will happen 5 days after. Or for instance, like it's just a general checklist. Maybe the target date is the same day. So this is another important thing that you want to take into account of after you build out your steps and your tasks and your outcomes, think of where is that target date? What does it actually look like? How can I set it up for my process? And so this is another thing you can go back and do is say, hey, I need to come in here and on the step level, and I'm going to say we need, we'll say the target date day of adding contact. Okay, the day we add the contact is the same day, and we can put that in our step information. If I go over to number 2, I can say that the target date happens on interaction number 1. All right, so interaction number 1 is the target date. And then interaction number 2, I can say is, we'll say 2 days after, 2 days after target date. I spelled after incorrectly. All right. And then interaction number 3 is going to happen maybe 5 days after. TD for target date. And so again, going in here and adding now just gives dates. Now that means what this is saying is if I add the workflow and start the workflow today for a prospect on March 3rd, it means if they don't give me an answer when I make that phone call, it means that the next task is going to be March 5th because it's 2 days later. If I start this same process, maybe on the 10th, then it means interaction number 2 will happen on the 12th because the target date will be the day that I start the process. And then interaction number 2 is always going to be a certain degree away from that process. Okay, so you can really think that, is it before, during, or after? For our third process, I like to have the target date on the day of the meeting. So I can say that, hey, this is happening 1 week before, this is happening the day of, and this is happening 2 days after. So depending on when you schedule your meeting, I know if I schedule the meeting on the 10th, that step 1 will be due on the 5th. If I schedule a meeting on the 12th, then it means step 2 will be due on the 7th. You can actually set that up so that you have these calculations done and make sure that you have the same process done the same way with a certain amount of increments between all of those different steps and tasks. So there's really a lot you can do, but also maybe you don't need dates for your process. And again, like even for this first one where it's just a checklist of items, you don't necessarily need to decide what a target date is. It is completely optional. But the benefit of a target date with those steps, make sure that you actually have a legitimate due date of when things need to happen. If you set up workflows that don't have due dates, it's not wrong, but there's less organization of what you need to prioritize and do next. But giving things due dates really does help. Now, I know like seeing this it's a little different since we're not in the CRM, things that aren't, normal that we're seeing. What I want to do now is go back over the slides and say, here's some examples of, like I said, of those workflows that we have. Now we have that prospecting workflow. I'm actually going to bring up, I know we had a question on it. I'm going to bring up this page, is we actually have in our help desk, you can go and search sample workflow templates. And we have a lot of examples of those. For instance, so our prospecting workflow, that prospecting cadence, I'm going to zoom this in a little bit, is we have interaction number 1 happens on the target date. We're going to make a phone call, send an email, and here's our outcomes. If it's been completed, we move forward to interaction number 2. If they're not interested, we go down to not interested and update their category. If they are interested, we skip all the other steps and come all the way down to interested in meeting, and then we can update their category and then schedule the discovery meeting. Okay, so you see, this is how we have it set up. All the target date, on the target date, 3 days after, 7 days after, 12 days after, and then the last 2, we don't set target dates because we don't necessarily know when it's going to happen just yet. And that's fine. We don't need to set those just yet. Now, the other one, a sample of like maybe a checklist is something like this. Again, maybe required information, what I want to call it, on the target date. And I have a list of items. Don't need to worry about outcomes because there's nothing that's happening. I just need to make sure and fill out these different tasks. And then the last one that we have, like that client review workflow, just like this, is I need to prepare for the review meeting. And we're going to say that's due 7 days before the target date. And here's those tasks. Review day items is happening on the target date with those tasks. And then I have review follow-up 2 days after the target date. And here's those tasks that need to happen. Again, you can see the different outcomes and how they go. So again, if I do these tasks and they reschedule, I can restart step 1. If the meeting's confirmed, I'm going to move forward to step 2. And if they cancel, I'm just going to end the workflow. Once I move down to step 2, if they reschedule, I can go back up to step 1, start that process again. If the review is complete, I move forward to the final step. And if they cancel before the meeting happens, I can choose to end the workflow early. So you can really see how building out your processes, whiteboarding out your processes is really going to give you the power and ability to see how you can actually, where the different roadblocks are going to be, what actually needs to happen. Make sure nothing gets missed. I have seen it happen where, maybe one person sits down and builds out the processes, but they don't know the other tasks that other people do for them. So that's why we really suggest it's important that you sit down together, whoever's involved in the process, and talk about those tasks to make sure that you don't forget anything. All right, everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. One last time, if you do have any other questions, feel free and reach out to us, 1-800-206-5030, option 3 for support. Or again, you can send us an email to support@redtailtechnology.com. Thank you so much and have a great day.
Thanks so much for joining us today for this particular session. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to give us a call at 800-206-5030, option 3 for support, or just shoot us an email over to support@redtailtechnology.com. Thanks a lot and have a great day.